You are tuning in to the You Are Loved podcast, where we hope to bring love and kindness to the world.
Welcome to another You Are Loved podcast. So excited to have Kayin Malik on with us today. And he is with nearly 30 years of experience in leadership and human resources. He's helped leaders and organizations achieve their strategic goals through the adoption of innovative and mindful leadership strategies. Some of his clients have included Apple, NBC Universal, Universal Music Group, Uber, DC Public Schools, and many more. And yet, it was his passion, not mine, for mindfulness and compassionate leadership that guided him to becoming a certified life coach, allowing him to assist others in achieving their personal and professional goals while finding the true inner peace. So let's work together to create a more enriching and purposeful path forward. Welcome, Kayin. Thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation to be a guest on your podcast today. I'm truly honored. So, I appreciate the introduction, and for the rest of the folks out there, curious about the pronunciation of my name, it's Kayin.
Kayin. Why did you correct me before we got started?
No worries at all. I love when people say cayenne because they like to say you're hot like cayenne pepper. So I accept all of it. I think it's wonderful. It's a beautiful thing. But yes.
Okay. So I thought you were going to say something else. Okay. So with all that, Kayin, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So how did your journey evolve from corporate success to mindfulness and life coaching? And was there a moment that made you realize something deeper was calling?
Yes. So, a little bit about my background. I'm a professional consultant and certified life coach, as you mentioned, with nearly 30 years of experience in the HR field, specializing historically in learning and development and talent acquisition. So, in that time, my work evolved to center primarily around leadership development, specifically as it relates to integrating mindfulness and compassionate leadership practices into corporate environments. So after doing that for several years, I kind of found myself in a space where I didn't feel that I was in complete alignment with my true purpose. So after 20 years in corporate America, I finally, threw up the deuces and I bounced. I was out of there. And I remember at the time I had just finished reading The Secret. And during that process, I'd had kind of this profound revelation that we were never meant to be worker bees in someone else's manifestation. We were all meant to chart our own paths and to serve from the unique gifts within each of us. And so in 2018, that's kind of what led me to launch my own consulting practice. And then boom, here we are.
Here we are.
So, that's kind of the condensed Campbell soup version of my journey. And we'll kind of dive deeper into what all of that really means and what it really looks like as our conversations unfold.
Yeah. So part of your bio and stuff, you speak about compassionate leadership.
Yes.
So in a world that's driven by results and performance, can you tell us what that looks like?
Yeah. So,
sorry.
Yeah,
And
go for it.
why does it matter now more than ever? That was just my last part of the question. Sorry.
Yeah,
I paused.
no worries at all. So yeah, the thing is for me, when we're operating within this space, especially, it's kind of like the integration between both corporate and consciousness. and for decades, the two spaces have operated in this very separatist kind of way and ideology. But we know that there's the data and the science around, happy employees are more productive, and there's the trickle down effect that encompasses, whether it relates to employee retention, employee satisfaction, employee engagement, things like that. And so being able to mirror, the data with the human aspect of it, letting that be the kind of like the bridge to facilitate those conversations around the importance of integrating mindful and compassionate leadership practices into your organization, because it does have a sustainable impact. It does have a profitable impact.
Mm-hmm.
You're using less resources to recruit additional people because you're no longer having the high turnover that you had before when you begin implementing these practices that create some more holistic space that encourages well-being and compassion and things of that nature. So it's being able to massage yourselves into that space and truly highlighting the benefits of what comes out of um, implementing like these compassionate, mindful
Mm-hmm.
leadership practices.
Okay, I love that. So a lot of times, especially women where with their career oriented, and that was one of the reasons why we started Your Loved, was to be able to help create some balance. But especially high performing women, they like we feel torn between professional ambition and personal peace. And so
Right.
within that environment, like how do you guide your clients to pursue both without sacrificing, their well-being or identity?
Right. So for me, the central focus in everything that I do at this point. So I left the corporate space because there wasn't a lot of the energy and a lot of momentum around the interest in transformational human resources. You know what I mean? Like the integration between spirituality and you know corporate corporate identity, corporate life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I moved into the life coaching space, the anchor for all of that is centered around the understanding that we are spiritual beings first, having a human experience. And when we realign with that truth, we return to our essence, which is love, which is well-being, which is abundance, all of those things. And it's about peeling back the layers and realizing that we are not our fears, our limitations, or the narratives that society has imposed upon us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's that whole process of stripping away those layers. So when I'm working with clients, especially women in that space, it's all about empowering the individual, and recognizing and allowing them to recognize and remember the wholeness of who they really are. And so when we look at the world today, we're treated like an assembly line, like everyone is being forced to fit into a particular box that society has deemed as acceptable. you know
Yeah.
and we're forced to conform, at the expense of authenticity. And so there's this beautiful quote that I love, from Chidi Ajiaba, that I tend to share with my clients, and it's, you cannot conform your way to freedom. Freedom
Mm,
demands that you freely think, freely live, and freely love. And so
mm,
that's the core of my work, helping people come home to themselves and lead from that space of freedom.
mm. I love that. Say the name one more time of the person that stated that quote.
Yes, Chidi Ajiaba.
Chidi Ajiaba. And where is he from? I probably said it wrong.
Yeah. We're probably both mispronouncing it, but and I'm not sure of the origins of this individual.
Okay.
It sounds, again, African in nature,
Yeah.
but the quote around "you cannot conform yourself to freedom," I think is the hook.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
that's the anchor in us walking people through kind of deconstructing all of the limitations that they have, kind of created around themselves.
Okay. All right. So now that you've how long have you been a certified coach for?
Yeah, so I received my certification in October of 2024. So
Okay, great.
so the life coaching piece of it is very new, but the consulting piece has been in practice since about 2018.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So, but like with your corporate experience, your consulting, your coaching, and it's like with over like 30 years in these leadership roles
Yes.
and human resources. So, what have you noticed about the way people silently like, carry stress, like self doubt or emotional disconnection? What have you noticed about how that's changed over time?
Yeah, so for me, I- I've noticed that we do see incremental changes.
Yeah.
There, 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 there is greater visibility around, well-being in these workspaces, and the prioritizing self-care, and that getting a lot more momentum these days. And there's a lot more conversations and open conversations around, mental health, well-being, and things like that. So,
Yeah.
so I think the visibility is expanding in that particular regard. However, I do think that there is still room for greater transformation. I do
Hmm.
feel that in my experience, which is what led me to completely exit myself out of the corporate spaces, when in that space, you start to realize that a lot of the actions and the messaging can be very performative in nature. You can have a lot of leaders in these roles that are, advocating for well-being, and employee engagement, and we can talk about, we're doing yoga sessions on Tuesdays, and and things like that. But then the actual culture is very toxic. We have a lot of toxic leadership. We have a lot of leaders in these roles who aren't actually living the very wellness and the very well-being ideologies that we are um, putting out into the atmosphere. And so I think seeing a greater alignment in that space, where you have individuals who are actual practitioners, who are
Hmm.
actually living that life, living, breathing well-being, living, breathing compassion, living, breathing mindfulness, instead of using it kind of as a sound bite that sounds great, in employee meetings and things like that. So we do, like I mentioned earlier, we see the shift happening, and we see
Yeah.
the incremental changes, but I do think that there is an opportunity for it to be more profound and more transformative in nature, as we begin to get more leaders in those roles who truly embody compassionate leadership.
Mm.
I think
Mhm.
that's the beauty, because you do at least see it happening. When you think about some of the organizations like Google or Apple, and they'll have these executive seminars where where they're bringing in these consultants and leaders around the impacts of, mindful and compassionate leadership. So it's happening, but
Yeah.
I would love to see, a huge explosion of like transformative HR that kind of incorporates holistic well-being, the total well-being of the employee, from both, mind, body, spiritual, emotional, energetic, psychological safety perspectives.
Sometimes I guess also it kind of depends on the company's culture to see if that would even align with their specific culture, you know?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So, and I think more people nowadays have been demanding that, demanding that type of culture to be created where they're, especially now after the pandemic and stuff, where people have like realized that there can be a better balance when they started working at homes and they were able to still get their jobs completed and be productive at work, yeah, yet being able to be there for their children
Right.
and their families and significant others, parents, whatever, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree. And as consciousness continues to shift toward holistic well-being, more people are going to continue to ask for those things, and not even ask, but demand
Yeah.
to to be seen in their wholeness. We've normalized showing up as fragmented, compartmentalized beings, and more, people are stepping into embracing the fullness of who they are. You see it a
Yeah.
lot with the younger generation. They are not
Yeah.
willing to compromise
Yeah.
who they are to make anybody comfortable, or to be, squeezed into a particular box. And I think as that ripple effect continues to happen, we'll see more and more organizations shift in order to meet that need.
Mhm.
And so, I'm optimistic. I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm a champion for expansion and evolution, and I think that there's space in corporate settings for both to exist, for the whole human to thrive, not just segmented pieces of ourselves.
Yeah. I remember, so I'm 51, and my parents generation, they weren't really into going to the gym and working out, into fitness,
Mhm.
they, therapy and stuff like that. And then,
Right,
my generation, especially when I got closer to my, late teens, 20s and stuff like that, it was really like, let's let's be into fitness, going to the gym, hiring trainers, and then also therapists started becoming a little bit more common. And
right,
then, within the last to 10 to 15 years, like therapy and all that stuff has become way more common. So it just seems like this trajectory, like over time, where people have just progressively wanting to break generational curses or generational issues that our families have had, and wanting to like really invest in ourselves to make those changes and become even better. So it's even going to hopefully get better even with the younger generation, who is becoming even want to be more centered, even more than that.
right. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic observation, and it's very valid. And I think that's also why the space of life coaching has
Yeah,
has kind of
exactly. And that
expanded,
blew up
and
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It has come to the forefront in all of this, because as people begin to kind of deconstruct the false narratives and the limiting beliefs, um, that has been conditioned into most of us, you then shift the narrative to wanting to embrace and amplify the wholeness of who you are,
Hmm.
and exploring what that really is, because again, it's peeling back the layers of all of the conditioning, and all of the labels, and all of the conforming, and all of the contorting that we've had to do up until this point. Um, and so, as people are kind of exploring in that space, the beauty in life coaching, which is very different from therapy, is, as a life coach, I'm never going to hold you to the frequency of your limiting beliefs. That is not my role. I'm going to hold you to the frequency of your truest self, your
Hmm.
wholeness, your worthiness, your unlimited potential. And that's how we continue to kind of build together, and peeling away all of those layers to unleash the full potential of who all of us truly are.
Yeah. So, when you're helping your clients get back and reconnect with, what matters most, what questions do you encourage them to ask themselves?
One of the main questions that comes to the forefront, and a friend of mine, he loves asking people this question just randomly out on the streets, but it also serves such a great purpose in these coaching sessions. And his question is always, who are you without your story?
Mm,
And really sit with that. Like, again, strip away the layers. Like, who are you without your story? Without this story of I am a mom, I am a father, I am, a president of this company, I am successful, I am, um, even the low frequency thoughts, I am
Mhm.
not deserving, I am not worthy, I am broken.
Mm.
um, I don't deserve to be loved. All of these things. But stripping away all of these things that you've attached to yourself, and getting to the root of, like, who are you without your story, and then
Mm.
let's start to rebuild from there,
Mhm.
because you are a beautiful, dynamic being. You came into this existence already whole. You came into this existence already worthy. And it's reminding each person of that. None of our none of our mistakes, none of our setbacks define who we are. And again, being able to get to that space of loving kindness with self, to no longer beat yourself up about the mistakes that were made. There's beauty in the mistakes,
Yeah.
and being able to shift the narrative to understand that mistakes are necessary. It's through the mistakes that we learn more deeply about who we are. We learn more deeply about our capabilities to navigate time and space. So it's an entire process, but it's being able to reshift the narrative to the affirming piece of who we truly are. Yeah,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know, the low frequency thoughts are not who we truly are. The mistakes are not who we are. Our thoughts are not who we are. Our limiting beliefs are not who we are. At our core, we are love. We are compassion. We are, gentleness. We are tenderness. We are all of these wonderful things.
Yeah, that's so true, because I know that in times of myself, like, I have the You Are Loved podcast, and times when I'm being defensive or probably a little combative or just not at like my center of who I really am, and then I'm like, wow, I just don't like that part of myself. What can I do, or what do I need to do to further remove myself away from parts of my personality that was created out of trauma in my past,
Right.
and moving into more of a place that's even more loving and kind and compassionate and graceful and forgiving, and being all that for others, but most importantly for myself as well, because if I'm like that for myself, then I can even be better like that for others.
100%. And
Yeah.
and you just hit on kind of like my signature mantra. And so for me, when I'm meeting with clients, the big thing for me is getting people to understand the importance of prioritizing self, pour into self, and serve from the overflow.
Mm, mm,
Deconstructing our ideas of, again, putting everybody before us, even as a parent. You don't need to put the kid or the child above you. You don't need to put your partner or your spouse above you. Pour into yourself first, and then serve others from the overflow. And
mm,
that's where the magic really happens. That's when we're operating from that space of balance. But then the other thing that you mentioned that I think is also important for people to keep in mind is, we came here for the fullness of this human experience. We
mhm,
didn't come here to remove ourselves from any parts of it. So that includes the entire tapestry of, this sensory experience, both the light and the dark, the contrast and the high frequencies. So when we're experiencing those moments of contrast, those moments of discomfort, we don't need to suppress it. We
mm,
came here to experience those things. The difference is, when we are experiencing the moment of those moments of contrast, it's to sit with it and to acknowledge it. For me, my approach is, I always tell my clients, treat all of your emotions like a baby version of yourself. And so, if you're treating all of your emotions as a baby version of yourself, you hopefully, hopefully, you're able to treat all of those experiences with this level of loving kindness. So, for me, in this particular example, when anger shows up, I'm not trying to push it away. I'm not trying to suppress it. I'm acknowledging, okay, anger is here. And I'm looking at my anger as baby Kayin. So I'm speaking to it in just that loving, gentle way to say, okay, anger, I see you. You're here. You're having a fit. You're having a tantrum. Come over here, sit on my lap. Let's talk. What are you feeling? What was the trigger to this thing?
Yeah.
And then from there, because just like any child, as the emotion, as you're letting it have its moment, it then kind of peters out. And then once it's said all that it's needed to say, then you're like, okay, you're good. You're good. Okay, cool. Now go back outside and finish playing. And then they run on off and go on about their business. And so for me, that's the approach that I take, and I encourage a lot of my clients as well when they're navigating emotions, because it's on both ends of the spectrum. When you're experiencing happiness, treat happiness with that same level of care and compassion, to say, wow, like, what is it that you're experiencing? Like, let's milk this moment for what it is. Like, what made you feel this way? And really integrating and soaking up the experience, um, and just being treating all of the emotions with that same level of care, not prioritizing one over the other, because in the grand scheme of things, no one feeling, no one emotion is greater than the other. It's all here. We're all swimming in this same pool of energy.
Mm-hmm.
There is no hierarchy in the universe, and as it relates to um, energies and emotions. We're here to experience it all. So again, just kind of changing perspective on how our relationship with those things, and typically, if you can put a face to it that resonates with you in a gentle way, then you can kind of use that as a tool, um, to navigate those moments of contrast accordingly.
So that way you don't overreact or are so immediate with reacting to like these different emotions that may be coming in our body. We can stay a little bit more grounded and
100%.
and go through it as it comes. So yeah, that's great. I think that's good. So I think that if you practice that and work to master it. I mean, we can never really master everything, but if we practice that on all of our emotions and it stays consistent, so that way when your negative feelings come up, then your body's already trained to respond appropriately.
Yes,
Yeah.
Jacqueline, that is perfect. That's exactly what it is, because you are literally taking the words right out of my mouth when I'm training individuals and meeting with them about these things. Each of these practices is the exact same type of discipline that we take when we go to the gym, and
Yeah.
we're working out every day, and we're building our muscle mass, and we're building up our bodies to be more healthy and more resilient. And you do the same thing in these energetic spaces and these psychological spaces, where you build up those muscles so that when those experiences happen, you're able to navigate it with a greater level of finesse than you did before, because you've been working out that muscle of well-being and affirming thoughts, for days, weeks, months, and then years at a time. And so when those moments show up, you're able to pivot much more quickly than you were able to previously. And so that's the
Mm.
that's the beauty.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Now, okay, so when someone, you've gone through, you retired, transitioned from corporate America to wanting to live authentically in you and going out there and wanting to help change others and be a positive influence and help guide others. Um, so for someone who's standing at a crossroads or feeling called to something new but afraid to let go of the familiar, so I'd love to know like what your experience was, but what mindset shifts or practices did you find most powerful in those seasons?
Yes, that's another wonderful question. Like you're just plucking them out of the sky today. So what's fascinating about this whole thing for me is what I've learned to do in those moments of contrast and uncertainty, just as you mentioned, is this whole trust and surrender. So there's there are meditations around surrender meditations, and it's very powerful in that we surrender all ideas of control. It's surrendering the need more than anything, the need to control the the world around us and our environments, and it's anchoring into the trust that all things are working in my favor. It's
Mm,
anchoring in that trust that the universe has my back. And once you kind of begin to practice in that space, that becomes your dominant frequency. And
yeah.
and, and so so in those moments of contrast, you then again begin to pivot more quickly because you're no longer focused on the contrast, you're no longer focused on the discomfort. You begin to focus instead on, I know something amazing is being born out of this.
Mm,
And so I can focus on what I am now creating out of this moment of contrast. So I no longer have to focus on the contrast. It showed up, I recognized it, and I've acknowledged it. But more importantly, I'm now acknowledging, but what's being born out of that? What's being born out of this moment of, I lost my job? What's being born out of that typically for most people is um, greater sense of abundance, financial
mm,
freedom,
mm-hmm.
um, uh, stability, or greater sense of stability, independence. All of those things are what's being born out of that moment of contrast. And so once you recognize what is being born out of that moment, that's what you focus on. The contrast no longer matters. Like, it served its purpose, great. Now let me water this seed that has been planted, this seed of prosperity, this seed of financial independence, this seed of, well-being and abundance and all of those things. So yeah, that's my approach to those spaces. I'm now able to look at those moments and really focus on, what am I giving birth to out of
Mm,
it,
mm-hmm.
versus focusing on the situation itself. The Alchemist also is a great book
It's a great book. Yeah.
to read,
Yeah.
to kind of anchor that in for a lot of
Yeah.
people, because I think that also sets the stage to the understanding that we all have the ability to alchemize all of our experiences and to transform them into something beautiful and beneficial. We can turn every rock thrown at us into diamonds. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. I'm making diamonds every day over here.
I have The Alchemist in my audio book, but for those that don't know it, it's a fable about following your dreams, and it's by Paulo Coelho, Coelho, Coelho.
Yes,
Yeah,
Paulo Coelho.
Coelho. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
so, so Kayan, on this podcast, we remind every listener that, they are deeply loved. It's Your Love podcast. But how has embracing that truth personally shaped the way you lead, live, and coach others today?
Yes. So for me, it is again kind of getting back into getting people to reshift their perspective into the wholeness of who they really are. At your core, you are loved.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only are you loved, but at your core, you are love. You are a radiating beacon of love. That is your dominant energy. You are a frequency of love. And so once people kind of are able to shift their minds back to that space of remembering who they really are, I think that's when you truly unleash all of the magic and all of the possibilities that's within all of us. I think that's when that aha moment happens for people. And so to your point, it's anchoring them in the knowing
Mhm.
and the reminding that you are that thing. Like you are not
Mhm.
separate from it. You are love at your core, and that is who you are. And from that space, you have access to everything that you desire, and you are worthy of everything that you desire. You don't need to shrink or diminish yourself to try to appease anyone, to try to appease society. You have full autonomy over your experience, and you have the right to exist in your wholeness. And I'm here to champion you on in that journey. And through that process, as you continue to radiate more brightly in that frequency, you will continue to attract individuals who will also radiate at that frequency and who will
Mhm.
also continue to amplify you.
Yeah, we
Your
have a
your tribe
tendency.
should be yeah, your tribe should be your ride or dies. Like your tribe
Yeah.
should be your best frequency amplifiers in the world.
Yeah. 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 I've recently had an opportunity to figure out, like, even at my worst moments, like, who my friends are, and it's the one thing that I've actually come out of the situation I'm going through is that I realized that there's a number of people that I realized that really know me at my best and stay a hold of that and love me, knowing that even when I'm at my worst, it doesn't define who I am as an overall person and my
Right,
character. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I have been able to be a positive impact and a positive influence. So I think, like, some things, what you're saying is, like, even sometimes, when we are at our worst, there's going to be people there that are going to, obviously there's going to be people that'll judge or whatever, but they
mhm,
don't matter. It's the people that are praying for us, that speak kind words into us, that speak positivity, that are there, that call you, that text you,
right,
that don't judge you, don't separate themselves from you, and are there because they know who you are at your core.
right,
And I feel like this has really, which kind of makes me cry sometimes, because I'm just so thankful that because sometimes, when you get so busy and you're just like running, 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 that you kind of lose who you are as a person. But even though, like, for myself, I'm such a server and
right,
caretaker and protector and all that stuff, that I lose myself sometimes.
mhm,
And so sometimes, God will put in a position to have us sit back and be taken care of. And that's okay. But it also gives us an opportunity to just sit back and understand that we are loved, and that it gives us an opportunity to see that and see that there's people out there that love us at our best and our worst. And I'm appreciative of that.
yeah, I think that's a wonderful thing, and that's again the beauty in this experience. As we continue to evolve in our consciousness and evolve as beings. Every day we're evolving and hopefully expanding continuously into the better versions of ourselves. And in that expansion, it is the understanding that we are infinite beings first, which means we also have infinite capacity. And in that infinite capacity, I have infinite capacity to hold you in your wholeness, which encompasses all of you. So when you're having those bad days, I no longer need to define Jacqueline by those bad days.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to hold you in your wholeness and understand that that's just a blip in time. That's just a momentary fragment in time. And I no longer have to hold any of these people to, these momentary um, experiences and fragments and moments that happen. It's 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 a true act of unconditional love. It's it's
Yeah.
it's truly when we're radiating in that space of unconditional love, where we are operating in that space of um, infinite potential and infinite capacity, and being able to hold those people in those moments without the judgment, and without even the inclination to judge.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
That's so true. So, Kayin, where can people find you? And like, also, can you let us know like who your ideal client is? Like, who do you find that you've been able to have? When I say like your ideal client, like who you've been able to have the greatest impact on and help them change, their life and yeah, move in the
Okay.
next direction of themselves.
Yes. So, yes, you can find me online, my website, kayinmalikconsulting.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I recently got back on social media, so I'm also on Instagram now. So it's Kayin underscore Malik. So keeping it pretty simple there, so people can find me in those spaces. As it relates to kind of ideal clients, for me, it's going to be the individuals who have gotten to that space where they've recognized that I am bigger than this thing. I'm bigger than these things that what society has told me I am, and I am intentionally now peeling away the layers, and I may need someone in my space to be that loving guide in this particular piece of my journey. Someone who's able to hold me accountable to my expansion and what it is that I see for myself, but from a gentle space. As life coaches, again, we're operating from that space of loving kindness. We're again holding you at the frequency of your truest self, not holding you at the frequency of your limiting beliefs. And so individuals who are really at that space where they're ready to shed away all of this baggage that they've kind of accumulated over time, and they're ready to really look at themselves fully in the mirror. The makeup's off for both men and women, so gender neutral.
Yeah.
The clothing is off. Like we're ready to really look in the mirror, purely, without any of the mask, any of the personas, any of the embellishments, and then take that step into reintegration, remembering who we truly are. And I think those are going to be the individuals where we'll have the greatest level of success, because if a person is in a space where they are, and I won't say comfortable, but they've they're not at a space where they're comfortable letting go of the story that they've created
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. If you're not in that space where you're ready to let go of the story that you've created for yourself, then there's typically a little bit more contrast in those journeys. But yeah, people who are ready to kind of just shed it all and say, yes, I'm ready to see Kayin in his fullness. I'm ready to see Jacqueline in her fullness. Um, those type of are where we see some great magic happen.
Okay, I love that. I love that. And so we'll have like all your links in the description as well. And so that way people know where to find you. And then it'll go live in 2 Mondays. So I'll send you the YouTube link so that way you can subscribe to the channel and be reminded when it comes up to play.
Perfect. Thank you so much again. I'm so honored for the invitation to be on the podcast. I hate that the camera wasn't working. I got dressed up for no reason.
You got dressed up for audio, but that's okay. You look good and you feel good, and then it comes through in your voice. That's all that matters, right?
Yes, exactly. So
And if
I'll
people
have
want to
to
see you live, they can go on social media and watch one of your live videos.
exactly. I'm gonna have to do a do-over somewhere where people can see me live and in action.
So, Kayin, thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on. I truly appreciate it, and I hope you have an amazing day. Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it as
All right.
well. And you have a fantastic day also.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Everyone, thank you so much for coming on to another You Are Loved podcast. You can get your 21-day transformational journal for a transformational journey at youareloved.store. All right. And please like, subscribe, and share if you like our channel. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of You Are Loved. If you have any topic ideas or would like to be a guest on the show, please hit us up on Instagram at youareloved.store.